Spanning from 1894 to 1931, the silent film era saw the birth of cinema, with pioneers of the industry laying the groundwork at the conception of this now worldwide billion-dollar phenomenon. But who were these pioneers, and why is it important that we remember them? Regarded as the first cinematic storyteller, Alice Guy Blaché set the precedent for narrative fictional storytelling on screen when she wrote and directed her first film in 1896, The Cabbage Fairy. Directing nearly 1,000 films during her 26-year career, La Vie de Christ was an early masterpiece of hers, with the use of 25 sets, a multitude of extras, and her understanding of depth, staging, and special effects being groundbreaking for the time. Although many of her films have been lost to time, from what remain, we know that Guy Blaché valued realism in her work, often using outdoor locations and having a large sign reading "Be Natural" over the entrance to her Solax studios. Unfortunately, due to many circumstances, like the start of the studio system in Hollywood and her own studios burning down in 1919, Alice's name was all but erased from cinematic history until recently, and unfortunately similar fate to the next auteur we're going to look at, Oscar Micheaux.
He was the first African-American auteur, and at a time when many black people were still fighting for their basic rights, it's unsurprising that many of his films were fiercely political. His film, The Symbol of the Unconquered, in response to D.W. Griffith's KKK propaganda film, The Birth of a Nation, aimed to show African Americans in a more realistic light. A common theme in many of his films, where black characters, notably played by actual black people, were often shown as fully fleshed out people. This was in direct contrast to many other films of the time, where they were often depicted as comedic stereotypes or lurking villains. He was unafraid of broaching taboo topics of the time, developing a harsh, emphatic style across his 40 feature films that dealt with interracial marriage, lynching, slave labor, and mob violence, as well as addressing divides within the black community itself, such as colorism and how white-passing individuals were viewed within society. Our most famous auteur defining the silent film era, the tramp himself, Charlie Chaplin's films, dealt with themes of poverty, class disparity, and critiques of capitalism through the lens of slapstick comedy. As well as financing and producing most of his own films, he had a hands-on role in the form of writing, directing, editing, acting, and composing the score of his films. An example of a subjective use of sound and score can be seen in his film Modern Times. In this scene, the score matches the cheery emotion of the character, only changing to a more frantic tone when his blindfold is removed and he sees the objective danger he was in. He brilliantly portrayed story, character, and personality through visual means, such as in City Lights when the tramp repeatedly saves the man from killing himself, or when the blind woman realizes the identity of her savior. Chaplin portrays this entirely through body language within the frame, with no dialogue needed for the audience to emotionally resonate.
Chaplin, like Blaché and Micheaux, led the way for filmmakers we know and admire today. Although much of the work of many of the silent pioneers of film has been lost to history, it is still important that we acknowledge and understand the impact that they have on modern cinema, from the use of innovative technology, acknowledging social and political issues on screen, or using visual means to get across character and personality. Whether as an audience member or a filmmaker honing their craft, their contribution to cinema is undeniable, and they deserve to be remembered.
I'm often asked by younger filmmakers, why do I need to look at old movies? Study the old masters, enrich your palette, expand the canvas. There's always so much more to learn.